welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com Broiler Chicken Show. Trade your trading plans, don't take too much risk on any one trade, and just let yourself get rich. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Weekend Frivolity, our Broiler Chicken Show. Buck. Suppose soon to be TWB Weekend Show. Actually, not a bad idea. Well, I'm probably a bit tacky. But if you got any ideas for what TRI management can do in the new year, show-wise, maybe you have some new ideas for them to kick around. Not a bad idea for you to throw some comments. No idea what the platform's going to look like in the new year. It should be fun for everybody to see. I was going to mention, I don't know whether it's tacky to keep calling this the Broiler Chicken Show. And I only gave it that name because that was a fun product that I used to trade as a commodities broker. That was pretty esoteric. If you can think of a fun name for these weekend offerings that I do, that I'll do in the new year, feel free to suggest. Might be a good way for you to interact. Unfortunately, though, I look around the world, and I'm a big fan of cycles, and I'm a big fan of when to sort of acknowledge when it's an easy time to make money being a capitalist, and then acknowledge when it might be a difficult time to make money being a capitalist. And unfortunately, it does look like we are kind of heading into a window here where it's going to be a bit challenging. Also, too, a big part of this audience historically, and probably that transition will need to be made over time with my particular audience, but I do know a big part of this audience happened to be very sort of crypto-centric. It was a fun story while it lasted. I do feel as though that the crypto-ness of this story and sort of the real reasons why I was interested in crypto to begin with, those selling features, let's call them that, they're fading. Doesn't that mean that you can't make money using this asset? But I think it's absolutely imperative that you try and figure out what value is in this space. The days of just sort of us, fluffy, bluffy, buying meme coins for the sake of buying technical breakouts. I don't think we're in that kind of environment. I do remember following the dot-com blow up. It took quite a few years for the world to sort of get used to what the new world sort of is going to look like. And then also, too, I guess you could make the argument after the great financial crisis, which was nothing more than just the silly bankster crooks went and just conned everybody into taking out loans. And if the public could just, neither a debtor nor a lender be, if the public had just respected that, they would have avoided all of that disaster. Really, if anything, that's a great commentary on how bad and evil debt is. It's also a really sad commentary on how the United States of America came into being with this idea of property rights and individual freedoms. And over the course of the past 200-300 years, they've basically gutted that institution, the Institution of Constitution. There's a name. And now, ironically enough, just like every other human in this world, those that believe that they have freedom because of constitutions are actually handcuffed because of these debts and the con job that these money lenders and money exchangers con societies into believing that debt's not such a bad thing. And the worst part about all this, of course, is that we are now on an unfriendly part of the interest rate cycle. So that situation is only going to get worse, and these Western civilizations are going to be in deeper and deeper and deeper trouble. I would probably say, if I was going to guess it, maybe like 2060. I think that's when we make our next transition. It's going to be a long slog here. But anyway, enjoy the ride. I know a lot of people want me to sort of, beat the drum that, hey, go and buy this asset and you're guaranteed to make money and this is the easiest thing to do in the world. And unfortunately, the world just doesn't work that way. I would say if you can exercise some patience and discipline, if you just cool your jets for like the next year, I think a really, really good buying opportunity will open up. Probably like, I don't know, maybe mid 2027. So I remember distinctly the last crypto cycle when the market pivoted, and I was doing a fun little crypto show with a guy by the name of Nick and another gentleman by the name of Derek, and we had the Ben Kovchek come in and help us too. And Nick, while I'm sort of talking people through, well, it's going to be a tough next few years ahead of us. There's not really a huge hurry. He's like, I think I'm going to come back for easy mode. I'll talk to you later. Never did hear back from him. Hope life's treating you well, Nick, wherever you are in the universe. So I do believe we are in the difficult phase of the crypto cycle, the 4-year cycles. So probably best to play better defense than aggressive offense now. Also, too, I might be very careful in trading lower time frame setups unless the higher time frame setup is actually giving you a signal, say a fresh signal to do something. I've been noticing some people are getting chopped up here trying to pick tops and bottoms in the market, and I think that's a little dangerous too. So, you put it all together, and as I started off here today, and my message for the next little while might be a little bit tough. Just be careful. We can look at the price charts themselves. I don't know whether there were any questions in the Q&A document. I know based on sort of my scheduling, this is the time of the cycle that I would expect everybody to be studying for exams. So I can imagine that the student body should be kind of busy getting ready and studying. Level 3ers, I know you guys should be studying hard. So I don't know whether we have many Q&As or whether we're going to even have that many questions from the audience. It's interesting. We have Norre there on the YouTube page, and I had mentioned a couple trade ideas that I was kicking around, and he was like, all right, this will be really interesting to see how it plays out. And 1 out of the 3 led to a very minimal profit. 1 out of the 3 made out to a very minimal loss. So basically a zero-sum gain. And Taco, being the Taco that he is, completely failed. So I don't even really see lower time frame setups really that dependable in this market state. Tough market state here for you crypto kids. as this image had sort of suggested, I was looking for a shot up top, but just never came. Interestingly enough, from a very higher, longer term perspective, unless we actually take out $15,000 lows, which I don't think you're going to see happen. These longer term bull ABCDs, they're still technically perfectly valid. And I do like the idea. There's a couple of sort of mechanics of this cycle that resonate with me. So the first being that what I often see in these circles is you kind of get like a first sort of rip the Band-Aid off, then you get like a consolidation period. That 17, 18-year bear, I thought was really, really good illustration. But then you get like a final capitulation about a year following the peak where people just eventually throw in the towel and give up. But so I don't really see anything out of the ordinary there. And then also too, with regard to these 4-year cycles, you can fight this stuff if you want. I know a lot of people were extremely disappointed that their shitcoin or whatever didn't 100x whatever. But, given the short-term cost of money and the pain that we're seeing around the world, we saw some interesting terrorist activities and mass shootings starting up again. And I was suggesting, of course, as a 25-year veteran living in the trenches of nonverbal autism, I can tell you from personal experience, behavior is communication. So whether it be mass shootings of students, whether it be terrorist activities, that is quite literally humans expressing their frustrations and anxieties through behavior. And as far as I'm concerned, there's really only one group of people in our society that are to blame for all of this. And of course, they are the same people that the cleanest of the prophets was the only time in his entire testament where you actually heard him voice anger, which in itself should be a bit of a surprise. I'm surprised we don't talk more about that. Anyway, shrouded sort of reference to Rothschilds, banksters, 1%, Joey Diamonds, whatever you want to call it. I hate to say it, but they're the root of all the evil in that they enable democratically elected politicians to live far, far beyond their economic means. And it's a trap, as Mr. Rothschilds himself actually said, right? If I control the money supply, I couldn't give a rat's ass what politician is in power. I think I'm paraphrasing a bit. You can actually even see it in action happening in real time in my country, where the banksters basically own the politicians, and the politicians, without any interaction with the public whatsoever, have basically just said to the banksters, we as a government representative, the Central Bank of Canada, will simply just take all those bad debts off your loan, print a whole bunch of new currency, and problem solved. And you see all the bank stocks all rallying here. Of course, to the detriment of the population and anybody who owns sort of capital stock in your actual nation, the value of that capital stock is diluted, of course, with the more and more and more money printing. Anyway, not really a new conversation I have with any of you. So, we just go around and round in circles. And what I think I see happen is as soon as the population sort of clues into this, then we get distracted. where, maybe it's sex extortion rings run out of the Caribbean distraction, whether it be gender issues distraction, whether it be I'm allowed to pierce my nose in a public capacity. Who knows? But they're very, very good at distracting the population. And unfortunately, I think we have a very, very big political event coming up here next November down in the United States of America. And I do believe the powers that be are going to be working their social media magic to try and inject as much anxiety and influence in the electorate as possible. And both sides, too. The omen is Donald Taco is the last president of the United States of America. I could very easily see all that situation deteriorate into civil war if things go really ugly. Only time will tell with regard to speculating and looking to make capital gains. Fortunately, in my humble opinion, I would just say, now's a good time to play defense. So unfortunately, it doesn't really paint the most enthusiastic picture for me to be talking to you people about. I suppose those ideas would just quickly review them. Last week, a week or two ago, I was talking about double bottoms in things like Bitcoins. Initially, the risk was to a break of these lows. That was a very big risk, and I was thinking about adding to the trade. And then dialing in the risk a little bit when we actually had setups fire. We had actually a setup fire right through here, but unfortunately, I was just like literally a couple minutes too late pulling the trigger. And that's the way it goes as in a trader's life, especially if you're working limit orders. Market ran up to the point where move stop to scratch based on my models that I trade told me to move my stop to scratch. So unfortunately, when we actually did start to break down here, my model told me that, you're best probably just to sit on the sidelines. I would like to see this W hold in and work. And, based on very simple time-tested principles, trend continuation patterns, chaos theory, big fat round numbers, horizontal support and resistance, 50% retracements, all that kind of fun stuff. Doesn't look like the market wanted to push up into that 100K area, but we're just consistently running out of buyers here. And I think this speaks to a big portion. I think one of the reasons why Taco and his sort of shill angle of crypto and meme coins and tokenization of the world and all that just isn't getting any traction because, frankly speaking, the public is poor right now. They're broke. They can't put two fucking wooden nickels together. Excuse my French. So as a result, in fact, actually, I even posted out first thing Friday morning. I was getting encouraged that maybe we were consolidating and setting up maybe some sort of base for a trend continuation pop higher here. And interesting, coming out of the Fed meeting, you can see this market tried to rally several times, just kept trying to push up. And eventually lost the goat and just had to puke out, which of course completely wipes out any sort of like trend continuation thinking. And now, unfortunately, price action through the weekend, we're now painting lower highs and lower lows. That's not a good sign. So at best, thinking that maybe bots will hold in, but you can see this initial bot move stop to a trailing level, but that's if this setup actually fired. You can see I was drawing it off this level. But if this is legit and it's running out of legitimacy, but now I have to start drawing my study here, have to get a break above this trend line, have to see structure come in on the other side of trend line. There's a lot of technical damage that's been done, and there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen here before we can get back on the bull side. So I don't know, at best, maybe, and this is just at best, hope kind of idea. Let's pop up through this trend line. Coming back from the weekend break, we start putting in some structure on the other side of this trend line, and we've got 3 higher lows to work with. Maybe we have something to work with. But that's a whole bunch of maybe, and it's going to take a while. Considering that we are even right now basically flirting with the lows here, you got to see some sort of bottom come in here before you can even remotely think that this thing's pointing back up. It doesn't look good right now, folks. Let's call a spade a spade. And the interesting thing about this is that if you actually look at the exchange traded fund, I had posted in the lounge heading into the weekend that you could make the argument that the ETF's lows really are down here, 46, $47, somewhere in that area. So hell, we could even gap lower first thing Monday morning, really puke out into these lows. We don't necessarily need to break them, just get all the public all freaking out and panicking. And then we put in some sort of bottom. And, for anybody who's sort of, watching the chalk marks, I think this is your trading range, this triangle here right now. So we could very easily gap lower tomorrow morning on the ETF and start off the week on a pretty sanguine note, come down, candle body lows for trade location, fill gaps in, blah, 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 blah. And then maybe we have the smatterings of a bottom. Who knows? But don't see anything yet to really get me feeling like, hey, you know what? We've got a bottom working here. Let's rock and roll. I was getting more enthusiastic. This is a weekly chart. You can start seeing the inside bars forming and that kind of stuff. But that's just not enough for me to start saying, all right, looks like we bottomed. And if we start looking at some of the higher time frame momentum studies, I don't even have Willie stupidly oversold here yet. So we can't even really think about any cyclic turns here. Actually, kind of a fun study I was doing because I pulled up this weekly chart that I do these sort of weekly Bitcoin review tweets I do off of here. And I like to overlay the eclipse cycles just to see what's the influence of the eclipses on the silly humans. The lizard people, of course, are supposed to be running the moon, and they have a emotion death ray or something like that they run out of the moon, and all of the negative human emotions that are experienced on this planet are funneled into some sort of negative emotion capacitor or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, you ever listen to any of the lizard people conspiracies? They're always fun to listen to. But I gotta tell you, man, if I was running a emotional triggering system, when the humans officially have permission to inject a bunch of emotional stress into people's lives, and then conversely, after they've been totally stressed out, let's inject some enthusiasm in their lives, just so they don't completely lose all their spirit. These eclipse windows are remarkable. And unfortunately, of course, we went through an eclipse window there. Just when Gronk told us, and this is why I think that social media is actually like a cancer for the human species. And this AI shit is just a potion for disaster. Um, and hats off to one of my, and actually even he helped me TA the last term that I taught at TRI, good old Bob. Bob was actually able to get the stupid AIs to admit that they really don't know what the hell they're saying. All they're doing is they're just amalgamating a whole bunch of feeds, news feeds, rumor mills, all that kind of crap. And just whatever is sort of on there, that's what truth is to these AIs, which isn't really real. It's and it does go to show that AI still has a very, very long way to go. But anyway, blah blah blah. I've never really been a fan of Alan or any of those sort of mafioso, PayPal mafioso types. So it shouldn't surprise anybody to hear Brian bark negatively. I really, really dislike um, all of that stuff, and you already all know that. So, anyways. What I found interesting was, just out of curiosity, I was like, well, do these eclipse cycles really have any effect? And you can see over the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they've painted the pivots in the market remarkably. I think it just, as if we are market participants and we fancy ourselves traders, and we're always looking for edge. Seems to me there's something to this. I took this study one step further, though, because when I was doing a search for how eclipses happen, I kept running into a weird thing where, the interneting, I don't know whether it's AI or maybe we call it artificial stupidity. I'll call it AS from now on. It's not stupidity, it's artificial stupidity. Anyway, I found it fascinating. As student of the market, always learning universe. And of course, think of the lizard people and what their job in our lives are like. What do they want? And I found it fascinating that this is just a simple study over the past 10 years, just looking at the eclipses and then overlaying it with our beloved Bitcoin. And something jumped out at me, and I was just like, that can't be a case, can it? I didn't realize that sometimes the sun has the first eclipse and then the moon has an eclipse. And it turns out that goes about 3 or 4 cycles in a row. And then you get a situation where you actually have like a lunar eclipse, then a solar eclipse, then a lunar eclipse, like all together, boom, boom, boom. And then the whole thing sort of reverts. And I think it's something along the I don't know if you've ever seen these videos. What happens when you just spin a screw in space? I have no idea whether this is going to show it or not. I'm probably going to get into YouTube crap. Anyway, will it show this image right here? Like, why does this happen? There's clearly something going on there that's we can't really explain with our current logic of the universe. And yes, I know this gentleman goes into great detail explaining it all and all that. But what I found interesting was, just out of curiosity, I was like, and I haven't done this in like 10 years, even though TradingView has the eclipse windows and stuff like that. But I never really clued into the fact that sometimes lunar eclipse happen before a solar eclipse, and then vice versa. Sometimes solar eclipse happen before lunar eclipses. And then I put the dates on the screen. And then I just asked, okay, well, is there any correlation to this? And it was like, oh, son of a, this can't be this cliche, can it? So if nothing else, today you're getting a lesson in whatever the sort of relationship of the current lunar or solar eclipse cycle is, just go with that. Whatever that direction is, that generally speaking is the right direction. And I'm quite shocked and how consistent this is. And then when you start coupling things like Bitcoin 4-year cycles, you happen to see quite a bit of correlation there as well. I mean, eureka moment this weekend, I put out a tweet saying, I think I figured this damn thing out. What's interesting about this particular cycle is I remember specifically being in the space here, and this was all around roly-poly ovally over there on Mount Gox and the Willy bot. Now it got out of control, and it took prices absolutely ridiculous, and it basically bankrupted Carpellis. And I think that it was done entirely on purpose. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. But I guess what I see is that if we see that the solar eclipse is in front of the lunar eclipse, it seems to suggest one thing, but then if the lunar eclipse is in front of the solar eclipse, it means another. So still kind of trying to wrap my head around this. I did notice like through here, solar eclipse, solar eclipse, solar eclipse, and then we went through this transition window. I don't know whether you remember this in the stock market, but I remember this specifically when it happened, and it was all around, Bush, Clinton going up against Trump the first go round. But notice, this was one of these lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, kind of on a transition window. And then you notice moon outperforms sun, or, is initial to sun. Moon is initial to sun. Moon is initial to sun. That was basically the friendly part of the market. Then we go through one of these transition windows. So you can see the transition into bull, then transition into bear, and you notice the sun is in front of the lunar eclipse. Sun is in front of lunar eclipse. Sun is in front of lunar eclipse. And then, isn't this mysterious? What happened here? Well, this was all the sickness and the authorization to take interest rates to zero. And of course, it lit a fire under Bitcoin. And notice lunar eclipse. This is your transition. Lunar eclipse in front of solar eclipse bull. Lunar eclipse in front of solar eclipse bull. Lunar eclipse in front of solar eclipse. But you notice, something transitioned here. Now we're back to solar eclipse in front of lunar eclipse bear. Solar eclipse in front of lunar eclipse bear. Solar eclipse in front of lunar eclipse. Still bearish. And of course, this is our window that, from the fib time cycle. You probably heard me talk lots about that. What a surprise. There's your bottoming window. And you notice that we had one more solar in front of lunar. As soon as that was out of the way, back to lunar in front of solar. And I think what you should do if you want to anticipate this is you got to map this out ahead of time so you can understand what we're transitioning to. And so then if you start seeing the setups come in on your screen, you obviously want to pay attention to them. So bull, 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 bull. Well, that seemed to have been pretty good. And notice here is, of course, one of our cycle pivot windows. And now solar in front of lunar, solar in front of lunar, solar in front of lunar. And then notice, remember, this is our transition bottoming window here for the Bitcoin cycle. And coming out of it, interesting. We have one of these solar lunar eclipse transition windows. So we should go through that and then basically head higher here, right through to our next transition window. Lunars in front of solar, lunars in front of solar, lunars in front of solar. 1.38 fib transition window, and we're back to the bear, solar in front of lunar. Gotta tell you, man, I love when I have those eureka moments, because I have been sort of humming and hawing how these goddamn eclipse cycles work in this, and I think I finally figured it out. So I was exceedingly pleased with what I did there through the weekend. And now I think you can make the argument that from a cycle perspective, and and this is what I don't understand about guys like Tom Lee. How the fuck do you fight this? Excuse my French. How the flib do you fight this? How somebody like him could actually say there's no validity to this 4-year cycle it's just pure insanity. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. Now, if we juxtapose our fun little where the hell did I put it? It was always fun, right? Our and I suppose you could argue spring, winter, summer, and fall, and that's what these 4-year cycles are. We all know that we're in fall and winter now. So if you just juxtapose our lunar cycles, you can see that the lunar cycles don't get friendly again until probably somewhere about middle of 2027. We also know from these cycles, and this is so consistent, I don't know why anybody fights this, just about every cycle, the correction is just about 80% of whatever the previous cycle peak is. So if we go back to this image, I think that this is our cycle range here now, and 80% would take us basically down to about 25 grand. And I like 25 grand because, oh, what a surprise. Last cycle's cycle low was right around 14,000, somewhere in that area. And if we multiply that too, because of the halvening event, well, what's 2 times 1415? Well, that would be 2530. So that lines up nicely. If anything, ironically enough, when it comes to capitalism, the simpler you keep this, the better. So, I suppose the last piece to all this, and this is unfortunately not the best backdrop, but our old buddy Benner, he doesn't really suggest that times are really going to get that good until probably, I think, like 32 or so. But I definitely think it makes sense that somewhere in 26 here, there is some sort of cycle pivot. Unfortunately, this next like 6 years is just a major slog. So I can't really discern how dramatic this probably not there where here this rally window shall be. What I'll just simply say is, if anything, ironically enough, if you follow along Bitcoin, I've noticed that usually the market likes to rally about 10x off its lows. If we put in a low 20, 30,000, something like that, then 10x, 250,000, wouldn't be shocking. And then if we just draw really simple trend lines, don't even really need to overthink this stuff. Something like that. This is a log scale, so it does take growth into account. But I think our next cycle pivot will be somewhere up in here, and you can see blue, lunar lead, lunar lead, lunar lead, solar lead. So ironically enough, we already know exactly when the next pivot's going to come in. I mean, this is irony of all this. You want to predict the next 4 years, huh? Probably looks something like that. Next 4 years of our life, there you go. My job's done. It's just that simple. The only problem is, 90% of the people on social media that actually tune into these kind of things, this is what they're going to be going through the next year and a half. Do you think it's going to be a fun ride for the public? What do you think? Oh boy, what a headache. My suggestion to all of you is this next year and a half, this is the window to get your futures trading rock solid. And, like one thing that I really want to focus in on in the new year is getting back. Keep in mind, I used to be a full service options broker. I used to be the guy brokering the deals. And I entered into this crazy ass crypto space, and I haven't been an insider in the options trading business in forever. So it's taken me probably a good 6 8 months just to get back up to speed. But I'm going to be doing a lot of income strategies in options land in the new year. And there'll be both long and short proxies, but more strategies around capturing what's called theta decay and implied volatility premium destruction. So it's awfully tough for me to sit here and make a bullish case for you to all go and pile into the market here. I do see somebody says this is brilliant, Brian. Well, that's kind of cool. There's 40 people watching. Did anybody learn anything new or valuable out of that? Could you give me some feedback, please? I'd appreciate it. Notice there's like nobody in the Zoom call. We don't even have our Albertans here. Gee whiz, man, I must be really either I'm getting worse at this or the market must suck right now. DMAX says always value BB. All right, well, this is unfortunately, I don't think that these kind of videos get you banned. It's just that I think most of like social media operates on the circle jerk principle. And the problem here is I'm kind of telling all you guys, put the tissue away. Maybe just go have a nice glass of warm milk or something. Let's get ready for bed and we'll have a nice nap and relax and think happy-go-lucky thoughts. How's the afternoon with Liam gonna go? Next visit, and that's the kind of stuff. Now's not the time to be all circle jerky, which is kind of a shame, but it is what it is. We ready for bear? So short and stack money for the buying window. It's not a bad idea. I will say though, they are in the process of great resetting us. So, the irony of it all, I suppose, is if you believe that the money printers are done money printing, yeah, right. Then you sell your gold and you sell your bitcoins and you go and buy, I don't even know what the hell you buy. But I don't think they're done the money printing for a long shot, especially what's supposed to hit us next year. Does make me a little skeptical of the bond market right now. Having said that, the bonds are still pointing. I'm not going to necessarily say up. I'm going to say more flat. But I also think too, this next year, if you thought, it's so sad. I don't know whether I can show you this or not, but I'll probably tweet it out when I come back from Liam this afternoon. You know how much I'm absolutely in love with Alan, right? So I don't think that's a mystery or surprise. But it turns out, and there are guys on the YouTubing and stuff that I really like to listen to. There was one gentleman in particular, although I don't know whether I can show you his video. It's too bad I should have tweeted it out. But he basically showed that this whole Doge thing was a total con job. Very little was achieved out of it. We all saw, and actually there was a government employee that explicitly came out and said somebody came in and stole all of the human resources records from the US government in one fell swoop and made off like a bandit before anybody could even say boo. So I think that the entire purpose of that whole Doge thing was a distraction. Number one, it worked great. I mean, the American public bought that shit by Alan hook, line, and sinker. He promised over $2 trillion in government waste cutting. But if you actually look at the US federal government expenditures, aside from Defense Department, which you can't touch, And aside from Social Security guaranteed entitlements, which legally you cannot touch, the U.S. federal government budget, the maximum non-defense spending, non-interest payment spending, non-guaranteed distribution spending amounted to a total of $900 billion for 2024. And yet Allen stands up on stage and with a completely straight face says, I think we can cut $2 trillion out of the US federal government spending. And it turns out, after all that's said and done, he is yet to be able to cut more than about $100 billion out of US government spending. And oh, by the way, no more park services, no more airline controllers, no more state liaisons to make sure things like, subsidies for the poor get distributed, all that. IRS agencies. Thought it was interesting. This gentleman pointed out that regulators around the space vehicle launch safety protocols all fired. Interesting coincidence, considering the companies that Allen happens to be running right now. And I think it was also too, and I can't remember, I think it was part of the transportation department. A whole bunch of regulators got slashed out of that to try and come up with Doge wasteful spending. But it turns out that the regulators who regulate autonomous driving vehicles from a federal perspective, those people happen to have just been conveniently let go. So, oh man, the whole thing stinks like yesterday's garbage. It's so sad. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. This next year, I believe, is going to be an absolute chaotic mess. And unfortunately, right out of the gate, the very beginning of the year, we have an incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Consequential event with this U.S. Supreme Court ruling on the legality of Mr. Trump invoking emergency powers authority to levy tariffs. And the scuttlebutt is that a number of the justices, when the case first came and they started to schedule when they were going to hear it, a lot of the justices put up serious concerns about Mr. Trump breaching congressional authority in their eyes. So, with that said, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is I do believe that the market, and of course, half of our job is just to listen to the market, not the other way around. But I do believe that the market back at the beginning of last year, when Mr. Trump started this insanity, I think the market was like, all right, well, let's see what the hell he does here to get us going. But, and actually it was interesting. Following the election, I distinctly remember, would be probably advantageous to find the tweet, but I remember I put out a social media post specifically saying the fundamental backdrop's relatively positive with, of course, pro-business, pro-crypto, taco politicians winning there last November. The technical picture looked relatively positive to look for markets to move higher. We were nowhere near those cycle apexes, etc. And the last thing that I had said was that there were no judiciary issues that were sort of standing in front of the court's way. And with no judiciary concerns, they can take this market higher, and oh boy, did they ever. So that's not the case now. And I do believe that those traders back in last January kind of were a bit skeptical. Wow, what the hell's the end of this year going to look like? Is this all going to be like a one and done kind of thing? And then, keep in mind, in November of the 26th, we have a big U.S. congressional election year. And it is very possible that Mr. Trump basically turns into a lame duck. all of the sort of chips are on the table for this upcoming November, not just one that passed, but coming. So we have a fairly big Supreme Court decision coming down the pike here, probably January, maybe even early February. So that could quite literally derail Mr. Trump's entire last year. And I heard that there is a very real possibility that about 150 to 200 billion dollars will have to be refunded back to these companies that would be illegally charged tariffs by the Trump administration. So and these are the people that have brought this case to the Supreme Court's attention. So they've got quite a bit of skin in the game. They got a lot of money at risk here. They're definitely motivated, that's for sure. Other than that, I can't really make a comment. But what I will say is it doesn't surprise me seeing the skittishness in the market up top here. I mean, we've come up an awful long way. If nothing else, one should expect sort of a spat of profit taking after that kind of move. Annualized rates of return are going to be very positive for stocks. So one should expect some profit taking, but on top of that big uncertainty about that U.S. Supreme Court decision coming up here in January, it's understandable that people are kind of running for the exits a little bit right now. And I don't know whether it's necessarily that they're running for the exits on something like Bitcoin versus why would I own a Bitcoin here? I mean, that unfortunately at the end of the day should be the question we always ask from a fundamental perspective. Can you fundamentally justify the value of a Bitcoin at $88,000 a piece? And frankly speaking, I can't. And I don't believe that the average cost of production for a Bitcoin is $88,000. And I might even argue, especially in this insanely corrupt world, I would be willing to bet that companies could grease certain palms to get long-term energy contracts established for their economies of scale operations, and they can bring their cost basis down very, very low relative to Joe Sixpack, who's trying to mine Bitcoin on a laptop, which of course doesn't work. So we have a money cycle, 4-year cycles. We have lunar cycles, which seems to me to be a pretty damn powerful tool that we should all be incorporating into our tool belt now. And I just literally clued into this thing yesterday while I was sitting there contemplating the fate of the universe. It's interesting when you have a bunch of time of just peace and quiet just to think about life, and you just stumble upon these things. Wow, look at that funny coincidence. Anyway, learn something new every day. I never knew this before, but after doing this study and walking through every single damn eclipse, I'm like, well, sold. What's interesting about Bitcoin, though, is I think Bitcoin works more as a very natural stopwatch in the sky. Kind of like our funny celestial cycles, lunar cycles, those kind of things. Whereas I think the stock market is heavily, heavily, heavily manipulated, and can actually go through long periods of time where you actually see things like Bitcoin depreciating because the 1% Rothschilds, banksters, Joey Diamonds, whatever the hell you want to call them, they've decided that they want to reduce liquidity in our society and take the punch bowl away. And, you know, those pathetic peasants, they got to just get to work and get a job so that they can make the payments on all their debts, pay their taxes, which is obligations you as a taxpayer agreed to, even though you never did agree to it. Thanks, banksters. What a beautiful setup these jerks have created. You just like, you know, if there was a God, you would think the God would have some mercy and give us some relief from this bankster crookery that's been going on since even before the days of Jesus. I don't know. And of course, looking at my son's life, it's very, very hard for me to believe in things like God or a loving God. Let's put it that way. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. So, um, it's going to be a tumultuous year or so ahead of us. That's for darn sure. Believe it or not, actually, though, I wouldn't be surprised, especially if Taco can win that decision there in January. I wouldn't be surprised if there is another leg higher here in the market. Because remember our Benner, the pivot is 26. The pivot is not 25. And also, too, I've done some studies going back to like the 1940s. And if we repeat that particular money cycle, the market then topped in 46 and then 47 and 48 were the great resetting FU events that screwed the entire population. Which of course paints to the fact that, this 4 to 6 year window is going to be a slog. Fascinating how there will be a little Bitcoin cycle actually in the midst of this. I have no idea what that's going to look like. Might not even be able to get Bitcoin to new highs, but considering I don't think they're turning the money printers off anytime soon, my hunch is Bitcoin does continue to just keep climbing higher and higher and higher. There is a lot of scuttlebutt right now that maybe what they do through this crisis is they actually nationalize Bitcoin, pass legislation making it illegal for the public to buy Bitcoins and own Bitcoins individually. Although I don't know how Mr. Fink is going to handle all of that and all of these various Bitcoin proxies in the marketplace. Does feel, I hate to say it, that the market is absolutely saturated with these products, which in itself is a really bad sign. Like people like Cathie Woods need to be removed from this market. And we all remember her wonderful recommendations. And keep in mind, there's people that have billions of dollars under management. What was that company? Teladoc. You remember this one? Wow, what a disaster this thing has been. And it just can't come back. It looks like it's trying to, eh? But this is when Cathie Woods was all the rage. And of course, just like Bitcoin, through here, she was shilling her products right, left, and center. And she was considered the next best thing since sliced bread. And how did that go? I got a sneaky suspicion, we're probably going to see the same thing out of her Bitcoin ETF. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me, actually, if the charts look almost identical. Where is Cathie Woods? I got all these funny, here we go. Now which one do you think is, I mean, there's so many of them. I don't even know which one is what. Van Eck? I don't think so. Franklin? Fidelity? CoinShares? Grayscale? iShares? There's so many of them. ProShares? Bitwise? Invesco? Galaxy? I think that's even like Novogratz has got a Bitcoin ETF. This is crazy. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these funds, what should happen is they should get, there you go, I think it's this ARC. Right? These all should get like amalgamated into other funds as time passes. Although I don't think this is the right timing, is it? Anyway, it could be. Nasty gap right there, nasty gap right there. Suppose we're coming into gap levels here now. Can't really make much of a comment about that. Suppose you could probably, it'd be interesting if there was like an 877 that lined up against those lows. Boom. Ooh, 4669 right down against that gap. So that seems like a logical level for us to come back down into. So what's that? That's like September, August 2024 lows. Let's go back to Fink and all of his wonderfulness. We'll probably have remember that September, August, September 24. Where's that? Which one can we use? I guess we're gonna have to use this one. So August, September 24. Let's move all this stuff out of the way here. Brian loves his derivatives. So July, August, September. Yeah. So both Kathy and hopefully you can see these, you've watched my material enough. It's pretty obvious those gaps need filling in there. So from the ETF perspective, you see Kathy's and, in fact, actually probably this chaos study here. Yep, there's the 4669. So that's the same study for Kathy Woods there. And of course, gaps like to be filled in. Institutional fingerprint. Where did the smart money last put an actual real bottom in this thing? I think it was over here. Ironically enough, actually, this is a very weak bottom because that's a lower low there. That's just like a V bottom straight off the lows there. That's not sustainable. So, the gaps, the last significant market structure. And I think what's more important about this is if we go look at the Bitcoin chart itself, you'll notice, where is it? Actually, I'll have it over here. Here. Here's where the ETF was actually launched. So that was back in January 2024. Notice there's the floor that I was making reference to on Fink and Kathy Woods' ETFs with the gaps there. So that's where I think this thing wants to go. And to be honest with you, why would I lie? I find it hard to believe that Fink is actually going to allow the people who did finance his ETF and actually did come in and buy this product here. I don't think he's going to allow them to suffer too much. So that means that, and interesting too, what a surprise, our longer term fibs, there's a 78.6, which is painting about 40 G's right now. Could we have like a 1 day spike down into 25? And at the end of the day, we finish at that 40, and you just got like a whole bunch of panic freakers outers into cycle lows. That wouldn't surprise me. Notice this megaphone 2, and there is our next BTC cycle pivot event date. That's the 1.618. I think that actually works as a pretty good target down in there. And if we do have some sort of panic down here, notice this huge valley. Notice it's gone. There we go. All right, so clearly you can see where the base is, right? And my hunch is that Fink and all the ETF people, they were loading up down here so that when they did the IPO and they sold it to their customers, they made money. I mean, that's the whole point of this exercise, right? So if you bought your Bitcoins in year 20 some odd thousand, the public comes in, buys the ETF, an ETF equivalent, you sell it to them at like 40, 45,000. I think everybody who participated in the financing did very, very well. And the key here, the way that Goldman Sachs ran the Ponzi through the dot-com boom was they literally told people, we'll guarantee that the price moves up, but if you do want to participate in the IPO and maybe get the IPO shares down here on that IBIT or Kathy Woods piece of crap, if you do participate, we'll let you in, but you must come in once every month or once every couple months and buy more. It's called laddering. And it's completely against the law. But in this world, you really think Goldman Sachs gives a flying fuck about the law? Come on. What kind of joke of a scam do you think we're running here? There's no law for these people. So the point being that humans are greedy. They know, they go, oh, Peter Fink walks on water, right? If he's shilling something that's guaranteed to go up. But the caveat is that you have to come in and buy more on a regular basis. And my hunch is probably the deal was that for the next year, you had to come in and buy a couple more tranches. And at some point, those people were like, all right, we will officially allow you to exit, and you don't have to buy anything more. And probably a lot of what the selling was there was those kind of people. So to all intents and purposes, ironically enough, 70, 80% corrections in price. What's the cost of production? Get it back down into these levels. And, you could make the argument all this is going to be is just a reset for these ETF people. They're not really going to take any pain. And I'd be willing to bet dollars to donuts. Mr. Fink doesn't want to take any pain. And he will step in and make sure appropriate measures are taken. That price here does not go materially lower than this level. And ironically enough, for volume profile fans, this is where the market is long this asset. And this is why you have to, if you actually want to be good at investing and you want to be good at making money, you have to somehow learn you are not allowed to come in and buy a million miles above value. And you're certainly not allowed to buy a million miles above the POC. This is just, it's amateur is what it is. Anybody who's bullish up here, you're just amateur. You're showing your cards and how much of an amateur you are. So can you learn from this? I don't know. That was the whole point of this exercise that I've been barking at you people for the past 10, 15 years. And as, we funnily go through these videos where I sit and lament about whether this was a big waste of time. But I think enough of you have sort of said to me, Brian, well, it was well worth it. I just hope all of you remember when I'm broke and destitute and the Chinese government has stolen everything from me. Maybe throw me a biscuit or something while you're walking by. Oh, I remember that guy. Remember him? The crazy guy on YouTube? Chinese have made him poor. Oh, well. Sucker. Who knows? Anyway, so, ironically enough, the headline of this chart that I put out is, I don't really see anything staggeringly out of the ordinary. Of course, the public's going to come along and say, oh, Bitcoin price is crashing. Well, no, it isn't. Actually, I would even argue at 80 some odd $1,000 a Bitcoin, most Bitcoin miners are probably perfectly happy with that price. I don't think the Bitcoin network has anything to worry about at 85,000, at 75,000, 65,000, 55,000. 45,000. I still don't think the Bitcoin network really cares. So just try and prevent, don't chase, don't come in and buy up markets. Respect these 4-year cycles. Just as simple as that, folks. Anyway, slow and steady wins a race. I'll just keep saying the same things over and over and over. All right. That might just be a short broadcast at that. I can see that the audience is relatively quiet. Somebody is saying, Burks, what are those crowns in chat? I have no idea what you're referencing to. Chris, any idea what that person's talking to? Crowns. Oh, maybe that's the number 2 and the number 3 and the number 1. I have a feeling that those are like the first, second, and third people that actually say something. I'm not sure. Something like that. Yeah. There you go, Burks. I don't know whether that helps you or not. I just a quick update on a couple ideas that I was kicking around. I still think that Mr. Trump isn't really going to allow crypto to do really well here unless he does really, really well. And I did notice that his latest attempt at a bottom here just got completely bitch slapped. Did a simple tweezers trade, and I told you that if we broke through these lows in earnest, I'd just get the hell out of there. I was actually a little surprised I didn't get stopped on that day, but clearly I got stopped here. So this idea gone. Strong opinions loosely held. So if you want to be a trader, you better get used to this. This happens a lot in our lives. So that's a big fat loser. Thought it was interesting though, the ZEC, which is I've been making fun of this thing recently about its volatility. It actually spat up a buy signal along the same times as the other ideas that I was tracking for the site, and that actually worked pretty well. So let a bunch of this go at a ridiculous profit margin. Still thinking we could work our way higher. Once the stock market gets back to work tomorrow, next day, we'll see whether this crypto can find a bit of a floor. I might argue in the near term, this thing looks kind of range bound. This was the sort of free position left on the books, and I'm more than happy just to let it work where it is. I'm not really in a big hurry to do anything one way or another, and I certainly don't have any signals up here. If anything, what I see is a megaphone, which means both ends of this extreme could easily be traded to. One shitcoin that actually looks like shit, it talks like shit, it acts like shit. I suppose, is that a swear word in this world right now? I don't know, probably. Sure, YouTube probably doesn't like that. But the point here is whatever bullishness there could have been there, that's gone. Had an idea working on Link. I actually thought he was looking somewhat bullish. Good looking W. It's there. As I had said for the audience, I was willing to buy the W, and then we were going to trade a bullish bot setup continuation pattern. Unfortunately, on this push to new highs here, that did trip up, move stop to scratch levels on this ABCD pattern. So that meant that if we did trade back down, you had to walk away if you had taken that bot. So in this sense of capital preservation and just trying to do the right thing, when this bot setup failed, I just walked away from the actual bot failure level and just simply said, as long as we're staying above 66% or 2/3 of this range, you can see where Mountain Man is, 61%. As long as we stayed above 66%, this bullish bot still could be working. I just have to see 3 higher lows and maybe some indicator confirmation, that kind of thing. That might actually be the case. You can see this low here from, is that Friday? Yep, that Friday low. It's holding in there like the Dickens. I might argue, if you are interested in this and trading, and these kind of charts, they're just specifically for the traders. Mom and pop, Joe Sixpack, you got no business looking at this kind of stuff. Because frankly speaking, I don't think crypto is a bull market anymore. Probably should just leave all this crap alone, at least until next fall. But for the traders, traders got to trade, looking to do stuff. I might be looking here for a break of this trend line, and then if we can put a W on the other side of the trend line, we have multiple higher lows to work with. I might strap on a bot here. Who knows? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, there really isn't anything to do, and we got to get this trend line to break, and then we got to get some W's to form, etc. And unfortunately, with the break of this low ABCD, we're actually projecting down into this Mountain Man level here right now. So that's kind of what I'm thinking needs to happen here, is trade back down here. And then we'll see whether this has to go any deeper. I do like the idea for fun, just taking price risk trades, because I love to just buy the bottom ends of ranges. So you can see 78.6, kind of like that Trump idea. You just don't know what the statistical odds are. Hopefully, for your analysis, they're more than 50%. But if I do something as simple as just buy mountain, or excuse me, 71.8, let's try that again, 78.6. Then I put like 2-to-1 risk reward, which is really asking for nothing more. We dip down against the bottom end of the range, then maybe come back down up against the upper end of the range, then sell like maybe 3/4 of the position, something along those lines, stop to scratch, and see where the wind blows you from there. That's strictly a price risk trade, and I would say it's much, much higher anxiety, higher octane, obviously, than the 3-step setup. Half of the reason why I teach the 3-step setup, and the way that Grim articulated it so well over the past 5 years or so. Great job, Grim. The reason why I teach that is because blindly taking price risk trades is a very, very high anxiety. And, if you're brand new to this game, it's best to wait for location, that price level, then start to see some evidence from your indicators that, well, it looks like they're turning. Divergence is a fantastic tool. If you have overbought, oversold indicators, that's another wonderful tool to add in there for indicator confirmation. And then finally, you want to wait for some blatant W type price action. Could be as well defined as this W, or it could be an inverted head and shoulders like this floor. Well, that's the final structure part of the conversation. And when you get that full meal deal, the statistical odds of winning, nothing's ever guaranteed in this game. That's the hardest part about this all. Even if you have the most pristine setup, a lot of times it won't work. But if you have all of those components in the conversation, then odds are, the odds go up, let's put it that way, of you seeing success. So, okay. So the point being here that I am entertaining the idea that this is a nice bear A, B, C, D. I actually think our target's somewhere around this 1290. I like the idea of throwing in some stink bids against these lows, see if you get lucky. But if we break these lows, just admit defeat and get the fuck out of there, or get the F out of there. Excuse me. So that's a typical altcoin that I'm watching right now. I suppose you could argue the ZEC is very similar to that. It's just I'm looking at this on a much, much lower time frame, but it's basically the same conversation. If I was working stink bids in here, I'd probably want to work a stink bid somewhere right around that 78.6. Same logic. Might drag this down against the lows though, so maybe down here, which is interesting because you can see I have my stop at scratch, and I'd be willing to take a long shot off of a test of these lows. I might even just have my stop there, but then throw the bid in down here somewhere against this low, and see if I can pick some up against the lows there, and risk $100, like I said. Then rinse and repeat. But I don't even know whether that's even going to be taken out yet or not. So anyway, hopefully you see the similarities. Big W, big rally, looking for a pullback. So big W, big rally, looking for a pullback. And then once we get into this range, that's when we can maybe, oops, I don't think it will go backwards, but that's when we can start thinking about this kind of talk. Love to see that. That would be an ideal scenario. Nice W's on other sides of trend lines at the bottom ends of ranges. I think I already talked to you about Bitcoin. Near term, I think 13 EMA on our weekly charts is probably pretty stiff resistance. Also, this prior trend line There is 13 EMA. There is the POC. There's the big fat round number, which I think is going to be a brick wall of resistance now going forward. So if you're lucky, we can get a pop up top here into that 100K area, but that seems to be fading as time goes by. Just this thing's having a hard time finding anybody interested in actually buying it in earnest. That's not a good sign. All right. Well, anyway, there's your crypto summary. Party. I suppose I know a lot of you like to look at where the hell should we do this? I guess maybe we'll do it here. ETH and good old Trump Jr. Really bad commentary on how people who really don't know how to trade seem to have permission to tell people when to buy and sell stuff, and that usually ends in disaster. Ironically enough, when I look at this chart, it almost looks like it's just sitting in no man's land. So 50% level. Boom. Yeah, look at that. 31.80, and right now we're sitting 30.92. Can't get much closer, less than $80-$90 away from the mean. So right now here, this I don't think is a very good place to either abandon the story or load up. I think it's kind of just middle of the road. So I can't really make the argument there's any sort of value proposition here. What's scary about a chart like this, though, is this looks like a megaphone. So everybody get your predictor hat on. Which way is this going to go? Of course, all the circle jerkers will tell you one way. Man, that looks ugly. So there is your trading range, folks. I find it hard to believe that they're going to be able to take it up here. Unless, maybe after that Supreme Court listing, everybody's in love with Trump and everybody thinks make America great again, blah, 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 blah. But even right now, that's a terrible place to place a bet. If you're looking for value, and the problem is how the hell do you figure out what value is on these things? It's next to impossible. I've been in this space now for 15 years. I've had anybody actually tell me, oh, the value of one Ethereum is this. So anyway, I might argue if you're looking for value, maybe come in on the buy side around 1,500 or so. Right now, that's no man's land. Literally the odds of market going up, market going down, it's basically a coin toss. So can't really recommend you guys going and risking your hard-earned money now. Probably maybe something like that. But there's nothing here. It's like total middle of the road. Actually, I'll show you names that I'm interested in right now. I'm really interested in companies like this funny little company. Keep misspelling it. They are a Litecoin treasury. What the hell are you going to do a Litecoin treasury? I don't know. But what I love about this, of course, they roll the stock back. So all these old shareholders completely destroyed. I don't know. Has that thing got any room to move up here at all? I love buying assets that look like that. And they rolled it back 10 for 1. So there's only like 16 million shares out. And the cool part about it is they did a financing right here at 18 cents. So I'm sitting there basically where they're long. And they actually gave Charlie Lee a bunch of stock right in here. So I'm actually long less than where Charlie's long. Now that is how you want to play this game. Try and be long these kind of names from below where the insiders are long. No idea what's going to happen here. No guarantees. This is a classic year-end tax loss selling window. So all these people got absolutely destroyed in this stock. Keep in mind, somebody bought through all of this. They all got wiped out. Sadly, all the people that chased Charlie Lee's buying, okay, I'll pay 70 cents a share. What? He's long from 20. What are you doing? This is the same thing as that Tom Lee telling you that I'm long that BMNR from $4.50, but it's perfectly fine for you to go and spend $140.50 for this stock. What? That's just stupid. So anyway, I'm in lower than where Charlie's in. That's good. I'm more than happy to be long that name there. And of course, options to directors, shares for debt, the whole thing. And this is my VCIM model. And since this is a buy when it snows scenario, buying into the end of the year, what do you think the odds are that by time the snow starts melting and the public, of course, coming back into the market, we're well beyond that big political event there in January? Who knows what the hell the world's going to look like by the time April, May, June rolls around? What do you think the odds are that I could see this level traded to sometime between now and next spring? I think probably pretty good. I mean, technical analysis 101, Mr. Gann would suggest that we should be shooting for things like 50% rolls. So this is the way that I make money in the market. Ironically enough, I'm still participating in crypto. I'm long lower than where the insiders are long. I'm buying stock at the bottom end of its ranges. I'm buying stock when it's seasonally appropriate. And oh, by the way, I don't know whether you noticed, this thing has a big fat W working here. So I'm buying technically, even as a cute little W within a W here. So I'm buying that. I would call this a rational investment. I'm getting in lower than where the directors are long. I'm buying right at technically at an appropriate level. I'm buying in a seasonally appropriate level. And I'm buying an asset that has very, very few shares outstanding. So the number of shares that I'm buying that actually represent a half decent size of the company is a hell of a lot bigger than if I went and bought like an Allen stock where my 100, 1,000, 10,000 shares is basically a drop in the bucket and represents almost no ownership in the company. So that's the kind of stuff. There you go. There's a nice free treat. What is it that Brian would buy in a market like this? And as I said earlier, heading into the spring, I would not be surprised whatsoever that, these kind of shill stories are all the rage. You think the Winkle Dinkles want to lose money in this game? That's not the case. So the Winkle Dinkles have loaded up on a treasury proxy in this kind of space. My hunch is into the spring, this thing will be the next best thing since sliced bread and pushing to new highs. There's people on the TRI site constantly harping about how wonderful this story is. If they keep that inertia up, the old adage, a broken clock is right twice. They were horribly wrong stepping in and chasing this. But I might actually argue reload zones. I don't know, you ever heard that Beamish guy bark about this crap before? I might actually argue that they've taken the fluff out of this thing. Did we actually get down to Mountain Man levels yet? Ooh. Oh, yeah, they did. So you can see that's my old buddy Brandon in there in the crude pits stepping in on the buy side. Classic institutional player. Not really shocking. My hunch is he's paying himself for that trade now. But you know how this game goes. Reload zones. So, I might argue if you're interested in this particular story, this is where you really want to get super excited next November, next December, next January. In between here and there, I wouldn't be surprised if into January, this thing has a pullback, plays against it lows. Everybody's freaking out in the space. It's the end of the world, blah, 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 blah. Then they somehow mysteriously get this thing to climb the wall of worry. You could even argue that trend lines have already started to establish themselves, especially this one off of here. And by time May, June rolls around, come on, you. I hate when it does that. As you know, I'm not the best at computers. I just get my price charts in the mail. I could very easily see, I mean, that's February, but if you think out into the spring, I could very easily see something like that. So, I don't know whether I'm certainly not endorsing you to take a look at this thing. I'm not endorsing that whatsoever. And I might even be very careful, right? If you're going to buy things like this CYPH, which is the Winkle Dinkles, you think Beamish is going to come in and say, yeah, that's a good place to buy. Remember, look at that Lux chart. What is Beamish buying? He wants to buy stuff that's right down at the bottom, not halfway to the bottom. So I hope you can see the difference. There's actually, I'll give you one more in the crypto space that I like. BITK. And if I'm not mistaken, I think these guys also fancy themselves some sort of treasury. But you tell me, seasonally appropriate time of year, not much stock out. Well, actually, they rolled the stock back way back here, but I think they also did another rollback here. But I mean, does that not look like something that the Beamish guy kind of likes to see and do? You know, I could very easily see that Lux that I showed you, all it does is this rally here in the spring and then into next fall and winter comes right back down. So, you know, if you're going to step in, you better make damn sure to pay yourself on the rally. That's why I always sell halves on doubles. So anyway, I mean, you see that there. Do your own due diligence. I'm not touting this. I couldn't give a shit whether you buy this or not. No vested interest one way or the other. But does that not look like something that Beamish guy, especially into tax loss selling season, all the old shareholders getting destroyed? Does that not look like something that the Beamish would buy? So there's two crypto stocks I'll be more than happy to be long from. But if and when they double, you know, damn sure I'm letting half go and getting that risk-free position established. So, okay. Somebody said there's a question for me in this Q&A document, so we'll quickly do that, and then I will head off into the hills. And if you could all wish Liam and I success on the roads today, I would really appreciate it. I have to say, I'm not feeling very good right now. The entire weekend, I've had a bit of a headache, and kind of feeling like crap. But I was like, I can't let my boy down. So, come hell or high water, I must be strong for him. So, if nothing else, just wish me some empathy and good luck. Right, 14th of December here. Hi, Brian. Given that we didn't get a market-wide altcoin bull run this cycle, well, I think there was. It's just I don't know how long ago you were in the space. I remember the get your shit together talk, and the altcoin space did move up. I think what happened was, and God, don't you remember Chris? What was that funny place that we stayed at in we were in some crazy ass country. What the hell country was it? It was like Guatemala, no. Nicaragua, no.
El Salvador.
Cuba, no.
El Salvador.
El Salvador. God, I saw those prisons. Oh, those. I mean, you want to see how if you was a alien that came to the planet and they drove up to those prisons and the way they're even treating their fellow humans, fuck me. But I should try not to swear. Said a lot of swears today, even though I'm trying not to. Monkey Lala! That's what it was. Well, that was the bull market. And I remember in particular, remember that cokehead guy? H bar is going to get you rich. And at the same time, right, we had what was that idiot in fucking Middle East? Oh, just this is how you write Bitcoin on a whiteboard, and now pay me $5,000 US, please. Remember that guy? What was his name? Somebody on YouTube must remember that guy. Nobody gonna remember? That's too bad. Gucci sweater wearer. So that's what his name was, right? Gucci Sweater Wear. So there was a pretty substantial bull. And then Solana came along, and this is a shout out to Dan Blockmates, who said that, hey, Solana is going to take over the world. And everybody and their brother was making videos about how you too can have $1 million market cap in under 10 minutes if you list your Solana poop coin. And even do this, and this. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's like 1 million Solana coins. So no, I actually think this space, it grew along with all the ETFs. So all the parents and all the 401ks and baby boomers, they all piled into Bitcoin and crypto. So no, I would actually vehemently disagree with that statement. I think you're incorrect. So why'd Bitcoin bull run this cycle? Do you think it would be wise at this stage to just sell any underperforming altcoins and go back to cash before the bottom finally falls out of the crypto market? And I can just tell you from personal history that this is the absolute worst possible question. And every single time I go through these part of the cycles, this question always comes up, and I always have the same answer. This is the absolute worst possible question you can possibly ask anybody, especially any type of financial advisor. You and I are standing there. We are where we have our backs to the barn. We are looking over the hills, and you see the horses galloping away over the hills. And you turn to me and you say, you think we should have closed the barn door last night? What do you think? Would that have been a good idea? So, unfortunately, and the same response. In fact, TBG, you've probably heard me say this exact same thing. Years, because I know you've been following me for a better part of a decade. Statement's always the same. I have basically about a 33% chance to tell you an answer that you will actually find acceptable. And unfortunately, I have a 66% chance of walking into a lawsuit. Now, I know you're all going to go, oh, I would never sue. I would never sue. Well, you'd be surprised at this world. The people that will tell you that they will never sue, all of a sudden, mysteriously out of nowhere, oh, hey, look, we got a nice letter on letterhead from blah, blah, and blah, LLC, limited partnership law firm. Oh, wonderful. So I don't even know whether I even want to answer this, because the odds are I'm not really going to tell you anything that you're going to want to hear. Thank you very much, Chunky Bear. Appreciate it. Gucci Girl. I don't know whether it was a girl. I think it was a guy. And I remember he was like totally balding. Typical sort of 30-year-old guy going bald, where it's sort of like, it just doesn't look good, dude. Just go shave your head. And wow, is he ever smart about Bitcoin? Anyway, so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. The question ultimately is, can you learn from history? So, going forward in life, well, I fancied myself a little old lady. Well, if you did do that, then really there's no hurry to touch any of this stuff. And actually, I think theoretically, Bitcoin itself has a rising, rise-only price. You just have to have a very long time horizon. So my hunch is, and actually what I do like about sort of the blockchain stories in this space, if you bought networks that are actually doing stuff, I don't think they're going to go anywhere unless the actual principals abandon them. Find it hilarious how everybody's in love with ZEC now. I remember when ZEC was launched. And God, I remember about 5 years there, you never even heard anybody say anything about the Z coins. Now, all of a sudden, the Z coins are all the rage. So, because these are commodities, and theoretically, if they just keep churning away, doing their thing, they'll just keep existing. So I wouldn't be on a big time horizon to do anything at the bottom of the cycle if you're a little old lady. Maybe you aren't little old lady. Maybe that's the lesson that you had to learn. Maybe you put too much of your risk capital into one particular trading plan, and I'm too impatient and I want to go and buy, spend money on rent and food and clothing and stuff, and I can't just leave this money sitting in here working. So that was a valuable lesson for you to learn. Don't put all your eggs in one basket or one trading plan. If you aren't a little old lady, then maybe what you have to do is say, okay, I have to figure out what my typical risk per trade should be. Joe Sixpack, margin trader, leverage trader, options trader. And when the idea breaks down, get the fuck out. And, you are only as good as you are at following your plan. And if you can't get out when you said you were going to get out, then really you got no business calling yourself a trader. So there's lots and lots of lessons that you can have learned. But I was sitting here going, well, the barn door's flapping. There go the horses. Do you think we got anything we can do here now? I would actually have to say probably not. You need to learn from this experience. When I started at TRI, in fact, one of the first images that I show people is, retirement plan, the entire financial plan, then the retirement plan, then your fixed income plan, then your blue chip stock plan, then your commodities trading plan, then your crypto trading plan, and they all have sort of a niche that falls into the space. And it sounds to me like a lot of people need to learn that financial planning. Where do venture capital assets fall within my entire broader investment approach? Hate to say it, most people don't realize that something like 80 to 90% of all venture capital ideas fail. 80 to 90%. That's a big number, folks. So, buy and hold in venture capital, that's a potion for disaster. So I don't know whether I've given you some things to think about. Am I going to tell you that today is the bottom and you should sell everything today and clean yourself up? That's just slipping a noose around my neck. What happens if fucking Taco comes out and says something stupid? We're going to create a Ukrainian crypto fund, and every dollar that's donated to Ukraine around the world, one Bitcoin will be bought in equivalent. Who knows? Or maybe every Ukrainian contribution from a U.S. citizen must flow through World Liberty Coins stable coin. Because Mr. Basant wants stable coins to be, blah, 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 blah. Who knows? So I'm not going to get into the business of predicting the future. What I'm just going to simply say is you have to learn from this experience and you have to set yourself up that in the future, you will not make the same mistake you made here, whatever that mistake may be. As I had said before, if you are a little old lady person, ironically enough, you've probably actually gone through probably about 70, 80, 90% of the pain already. And you might find a year from now, actually, prices just sat there and did absolutely nothing, like my Lux. I'm buying it now. I might have to sit there for a couple of years doing absolutely nothing with that stock, but I'm fine with that. Anyway, that's food for thought for you. But for me to actually come out and say the best thing for you to do today is this. Way, way too difficult of a question for me to actually say that. All I will simply say is if you can afford the life lesson, it's probably worth it for you to hold on to all of these assets and just see how this plays out over the next few years. You might find, in fact, actually, there was a metal stock that I bought. It was one of those chat pack SPACs. And I bought it in 2021, and it took me till 2025 to bang out a double on it. 4 years sitting there doing absolutely nothing. You might have to go through that learning experience. And if anything, that's probably a good learning experience to go through. So that's my 2 cents. And, tragically, as the cycles suggest, I'm not really going to be crypto bullish for probably the next year. And I'd be willing to bet that I'm probably just going to be sitting here nibbling away on what I would consider value in the space, but not really in a big hurry to call bottoms here and just watch. I mean, keep in mind, this next year's political antics are going to be absolutely over the top insane. So get ready. If you thought 25 was crazy, it's going to be paltry in comparison to what 26 is going to look like. So, okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. Wish me luck on the roads with Lily. Thank you very much for all of your support and best wishes. I hope I gave you some value out of that today. Not a hell of a lot I could really throw at the wall in this type of market state. Did give you a couple junior names you might want to take a look at it if you have some speculative capital lying around. I suppose just to finish off here, let's take a quick boo at the name someone asked me to look at. Where was that? Maybe trading. I don't know. That's a tough one. Where is somebody asked me to look at one earlier when I was just glancing at this. That's funny. I could have sworn I saw someone ask. There we are on Monero. Good old XMR. Right? See, there's a good example of one kind of like Zcash, where man, I remember this thing was all the rage. And nobody ever talks about this stuff anymore. So could you find that all of a sudden mysteriously, well, actually you can see where the bottom is. So I can't say that actually. That looks like a bit old. Wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole right here. I buy down markets. So all I can simply say is, it looks like you should be long for about 156, which means you let half of it go at 300 and change, whatever. And next sell price should be up around 600. So sell half on a double, sell half on a double, that kind of thing. Am I holding my breath out for that event? I could see in some sort of circle jerk euphoria. We could tag up into that 600 area. That doesn't look unrealistic up into here. So don't be shocked. I don't know whether I have any of this on the books or not. I might. I haven't looked at that portfolio in a while. In fact, actually, I have to liquidate all of it, so I'm not really that excited about it one way or the other. But anyway, there is 300-ish. And my next sell order, interesting enough, right up against trendline resistance, would be up in that $600 area. It's not unreasonable. Would I buy here? No, not even remotely. And if I was selling, I think I would target this area up top here to try and sell. Maybe also too, there might be a big fog and bomb off of these lows. There you go. 4669 stabs. And if you can tag that trend line, that's probably a great trade location somewhere up in that area. So there you go. Hopefully that helped you a little bit. Actually, it looks like it's a bit off. So, Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. Sure hope you got some value out of all this. Slow and steady wins a race. PMA for the win. Try not to take no win nickels. Remember what your number one job is. Give Liam and I a big wish of luck out on the roads. And Brian is the absolute best possible support this beautiful little soul could possibly run into here today. That's my wish. So wish me luck, everybody. All right. All the best and bye for now.